Hello there, friends. Today I've ridden my bike out to Riverfront Park. It's a warm and lazy Saturday afternoon. And the mosquitoes are out, so if I'm periodically slapping my legs, slapping my arms, it's the mosquitoes. I'm not descending into madness. And today I'll be reading an article, once again from Harvard Business Review, and it's from their collection of articles on teams. Here's the book. The article is a little bit longer than the ones that I have been reading recently, and so I will try to not add so much of my own commentary in there and just read the article as it's been written by the author. A lot of those shorter form articles, they have been adapted, and so they don't read as well, whereas these are the actual articles written by the author. And speaking of author, a little bit about the author, if you'll give me one moment. First of all, I should give you the title. The title of the article is "The New Science on Building Great Teams," and it's written by Alex Sandy Pentland. And about the author, Alex Sandy Pentland is a professor at MIT, the director of MIT's Human Dynamics Laboratory, and the MIT Media Lab Entrepreneurship Program, and the chairman of Sociometric Solutions. Wonderful. Let's begin the article. The New Science of Building Great Teams. The Chemistry of High-Performing Groups is No Longer a Mystery, by Alex Sandy Pentland. If you were looking for teams to rig for success, a call center would be a good place to start. The skills required for call center work are easy to identify and hire for. The tasks involved are clear-cut and easy to monitor. Just about every aspect of team performance is easy to measure. Number of issues resolved, customer satisfaction, average handling time, AHT, the golden standard of call center efficiency, and the list goes on. Why then did the manager at a major bank's call center have such trouble figuring out why some of his teams got excellent results while other seemingly similar teams struggled? Indeed, none of the metrics that poured in hinted at the reason for the performance gaps. This mystery reinforced his assumption that team building was an art, not a science. The truth is quite the opposite. At MIT's Human Dynamics Laboratory, we have identified the elusive group dynamics that characterize high-performing teams. Those blessed with the energy, creativity, and shared commitment to far surpass other teams. These dynamics are observable, quantifiable, and measurable. And perhaps most important, teams can be taught how to strengthen them. Looking for the it factor. When we set out to document the behavior of teams that click, we noticed we could sense a buzz in the team, even if we didn't understand what the members were talking about. That suggested that the key to high performance lay not in the content of a team's discussions, but in the manner in which it was communicating. Yet little of the research on team building had focused on communication. Suspecting it might be crucial, we decided to examine it more deeply. For our studies, we looked across a diverse set of industries to find workplaces that had similar teams with varying performances. Ultimately, our research included innovation teams, post-op wards in hospitals, customer-facing teams in banks, backroom operations teams, and call center teams, amongst others. We equipped all the members of those teams with electronic badges that collected data on their individual communication behavior, tone of voice, body language, who they talked to, and how much, and more. With remarkable consistency, the data confirmed that communication indeed plays a critical role in building successful teams. In fact, we've found patterns of communication to be the most important predictor of a team's success. Not only that, but they are as significant as all other factors: individual intelligence, personality, skill, and the substance of the discussions combined. Patterns of communication, for example, explained why performance varied so widely among the seemingly identical teams in that bank's call center. When my fellow researchers, my colleagues at Sociometric Solutions, Taimir Kim, Daniel Olgin, and Ben Weber, and I analyzed the data collected, we found that the best predictors of productivity were a team's energy and engagement outside formal meetings. Together, those two factors explained 1/3 of the variations in dollar productivity among teams. Drawing on that insight, we advised the center's manager to revise the employees' coffee break schedule so that everyone on a team took a break at the same time. That would allow people more time to socialize with their teammates away from their workstations. Though the suggestion flew in the face of standard efficiency practices, the manager was baffled and desperate, and so he tried it. And it worked. AHT, that's average handling time, fell by more than 20% among lower performing teams and decreased 8% overall at the call center. Now, I'll just point out that's an incredible number for, lower performing teams to have decreased their AHT, increased their productivity by 20% is a huge amount. If you think about the average work week of being 40 hours, 10% would be 4 hours, 20% would be 8 hours, an entire workday. So essentially, these lower performing teams, from that one simple act, that one simple modification of allowing them to take their breaks together, allowed that team to perform a typical 5 days of their work in 4 days. Now the manager is changing the break schedule at all 10 of the bank's call centers, which employ a total of 25,000 people. And it is forecasting $15 million a year in productivity increases. He has also seen employee satisfaction at call centers rise, sometimes by more than 10%. Any company, no matter how large, has the potential to achieve this same kind of transformation. Firms can now obtain the tools and data they need to accurately dissect and engineer high performance. Building great teams has become a science. Here is how it works. Overcoming the limits of observation. When we sense esprit de corps, Now, esprit de corps is a French word. Literal translation is spirit of the body, but it's not individual body, it's the common spirit, the common good feeling that we have. So when we sense esprit de corps, that perception doesn't come out of the blue. It's the result of our innate ability to process the hundreds of complex communication cues that we constantly send and receive. But until recently, we have never been able to objectively record such cues as data that we could then mine to understand why teams click. Mere observation simply couldn't capture every nuance of human behavior across an entire team. What we had then was only a strong sense of the things: good leadership and followership, palpable shared commitment, and terrific brainstorming session. That made a team greater than the sum of its parts. Recent advances in wireless and sensor technology, though, have helped us overcome those limitations, allowing us to measure that ineffable it factor. The badges, developed by my lab at MIT, are in their 7th version. They generate more than 100 data points a minute and work unobtrusively enough that we're confident we're capturing natural behavior. We've documented a period of adjustment to the badges. Early on, people appear to be aware of them and act unnaturally, but the effect dissipates, usually within an hour. We've deployed them in 21 organizations over the past 7 years, measuring the communication patterns of about 2,500 people, sometimes for 6 weeks at a time. And with the data we've collected, we've mapped out the communication behaviors of large numbers of people as they go about their lives at an unprecedented level of detail. The badges produce sociometrics, or measures of how people interact, such as what tone of voice they use, whether they face one another, how much they gesture, how much they talk, listen and interrupt, and even their levels of extroversion and empathy. By comparing data gathered from all the individuals on a team with performance data, we can identify the communication patterns that make for successful teamwork. Those patterns vary little, regardless of the type of team and its goal, be it a call center team striving for efficiency, an innovation team at a pharmaceutical company looking for new product ideas, or a senior management team hoping to improve its leadership. Productive teams have certain data signatures, and they're so consistent that we can predict a team's success simply by looking at the data, without ever meeting its members. We've been able to foretell, for example, which teams will win a business plan contest solely on the basis of data collected from team members wearing badges at a cocktail reception. See, Defend Your Research. We can measure the power of charisma. This is an HBR February 2010 article. The one that I mentioned, Defend Your Research. And that's what they refer to with wearing the badges at the cocktail party. We've predicted the financial results that teams making investments would achieve just on the basis of data collected during their negotiations. We can see in the data when team members will report that they've had a productive or creative day. The data also reveal at a higher level that successful teams share several defining characteristics. The author then lists these 5 characteristics. Number 1, everyone on the team talks and listens in roughly equal measure, keeping contributions short and sweet. Number 2, members face one another and their conversations and gestures are energetic. Number 3, members connect directly with one another, not just with the team leader. Number 4, members carry on back channel or side conversations within the team. Number 5, members periodically break, go exploring outside the team, and bring information back. The data also establish another surprising fact. Individual reasoning and talent contribute far less to team success than one might expect. The best way to build a great team is not to select individuals for their smarts and accomplishments, but to learn how they communicate and to shape and guide the team so that it follows successful communication patterns. The key elements of communication. In our research, we identified 3 aspects of communication that affect team performance. The first is energy, which we measure by the number and the nature of exchanges among team members. A single exchange is defined as a comment and some acknowledgement, for example, a yes or nod of the head. Normal conversations are often made up of many of these exchanges, and in team settings, more than one exchange may be going on at a time. The most valuable form of communication is face-to-face. The next most valuable is by phone or video conference, but with a caveat. Those technologies become less effective as more people participate in the call or conference. The least valuable forms of communication are email and texting. We collect data on those kinds of communication without using the badges. Still, the number of face-to-face exchanges alone provides a good rough measure of energy. The number of exchanges engaged in, weighted for their value by type of communication, gives each team member an energy score, which is averaged with the other members' results to create a team score. Energy levels within a team are not static. For instance, in my research group at MIT, we sometimes have meetings at which I update people on upcoming events, rule changes, and other administrative details. These meetings are invariably low energy. But when someone announces a new discovery in the same group, excitement and energy skyrocket, as all the members start talking to one another at once. So that was the first aspect, energy. The second important dimension of communication is engagement, which reflects the distribution of energy among team members. In a simple 3-person team, engagement is a function of the average amount of energy between A and B, A and C, and B and C. If all members of a team have relatively equal and reasonably high energy with all the other members, engagement is extremely strong. Teams that have clusters of members who engage in high energy communication while other members do not participate at all don't perform as well. When we observed teams making investment decisions, for instance, the partially engaged teams made worse, i.e. less profitable decisions than the fully engaged teams. This effect was particularly common in far-flung teams that talked mostly by telephone. So those are the first 2, energy, and secondly, engagement. The third critical dimension, exploration, involves communication that members engage in outside their team. It's an interesting point that the author brings up, that making a team better in this third dimension that he points out involves accessing resources outside of their teams, other information, other perspectives. The third critical dimension, exploration, involves communication that members engage in outside their team. Exploration essentially is the energy between a team and the other teams it interacts with. High-performing teams seek more outside connection, we've found. We've also seen that scoring well on exploration is most important for creative teams, such as those responsible for innovation, which need fresh perspectives. To measure exploration, we've had to deploy badges more widely in an organization. We've done so in many settings, including the MIT Media Lab and a multinational company's marketing department, which comprised several teams dedicated to different functions. Our data also show that exploration and engagement, while both good, do not easily coexist. Right? Exploration and engagement don't easily coexist because they require that the energy of team members be put to two different uses. Energy is a finite resource. The more that people devote to their own team, i.e. engagement, the less they have to use outside their team, exploration, and vice versa. But they must do both. Successful teams, especially successful creative teams, oscillate between exploration for discovery and engagement for integration of the ideas gathered from outside sources. At the MIT Media Lab, this pattern accounted for almost half of the differences in creative output of research groups. And in one industrial research lab we studied, it distinguished teams with a high creativity from those with low creativity with almost 90% accuracy. Beyond conventional wisdom. A skeptic would argue that the points about energy, engagement, and exploration are blindingly obvious. But the data from our research improve on conventional wisdom. They add an unprecedented level of precision to our observations, quantify the key dynamics, and make them measurable to an extraordinary degree. For example, we now know that 35% of the variation in a team's performance can be accounted for simply by the number of face-to-face exchanges among team members. We know as well that the right number of exchanging in a team is as many as dozens per working hour. But that going beyond that ideal number decreases performance. We can also state with certainty that in a typical high-performance team, members are listening or speaking to the whole group only about half the time. And when addressing the whole group, each team member speaks for only his or her fair share of time, using brief, to-the-point statements. The other half of the time, team members are engaging in one-on-one conversations, which are usually quite short. It may seem illogical that all those side exchanges contribute to better performances rather than distract a team, but the data proves otherwise. The data we've collected on the importance of socializing not only builds on conventional wisdom, but sometimes upends it. Social time turns out to be deeply critical to team performance, often accounting for more than 50% of positive changes in communication patterns, even in a setting as efficiency-focused as a call center. Without the data, there's simply no way to understand which dynamics drive which successful teams. The managers of one young software company, for instance, thought they could promote better communication among employees by hosting beer meets and other events. But the badge data showed that these events had little or no effect. In contrast, the data revealed that making the tables in the company's lunchroom longer so that strangers sat together had a huge impact. A similarly refined view of exploration has emerged in the data. Using fresh perspectives to improve performance is hardly a surprising idea. It's practically management canon. But our research shows that most companies don't do it the right way. Many organizations we've studied seek outside counsel repeatedly from the same sources and only at certain times. When building a business case, say, or doing a post-mortem on a project. The best performing and most creative teams in our study, however, sought fresh perspectives constantly from all other groups in and sometimes outside of the organization. How to apply the data. For management tasks that have long defied objective analysis, like team building, data can now provide a foundation on which to build better individual and team performance. This happens in 3 steps. Step 1, visualization. In fact, I'll read the names for each step. Step 1 is visualization. Step 2 is training. And step 3 is fine-tuning the performance. Step 1, visualization. Again, these are the 3 steps to provide a foundation on which to build better individual and team performance. Visualization. In raw form, the data doesn't mean much to the teams being measured. An energy score of 0.5 may be good for an individual, for example, but descriptions of team dynamics that rely on statistical output are not particularly user-friendly. However, using the formulas we've developed to calculate energy, engagement, and exploration, we can create maps of how a team is doing on these dimensions, visualizations that clearly convey the data and are instantly accessible to anyone. The maps starkly highlight weaknesses that teams may not have recognized. They identify low energy, unengaged team members who, even in the visualization, look as if they're being ignored. For example, see the sidebar mapping teamwork. And this is the sidebar mapping teamwork you won't really be able to see on the camera, but what I'll do is when I'm doing a little bit of post-production, and I'll admit my editing skills are quite crap, I'll try and get this in here so that you can see it while I continue to read. When we spot such people, and that is people that are low energy and unengaged, when we spot such people, we dig down into their individual badge data. Are they trying to communicate and being ignored or cut off? Do they cut others off and not listen, thereby discouraging colleagues from seeking their opinions? Do they communicate only with one other team member? Do they face other people in the meetings or tend to hide from the group physically? Excuse me. Do they speak loudly enough? Perhaps the leader of a team is too dominant. It may be that she or he is doing most of the talking at meetings and needs to work on encouraging others to participate. Energy and engagement maps will make such problems very clear. And once we know what they are, we can begin to fix them. Exploration maps reveal patterns of communication across organizations. They can expose, for instance, whether a department's management is failing to engage with all of its teams. Time-lapse views of engagement and exploration will show whether teams are effectively oscillating between those 2 activities. It's also possible, and when the author says those 2 activities, they mean exploration versus engagement. Those are the 2 aspects that need to be sort of balanced with one another. Time-lapse views of engagement and exploration will show whether teams are effectively oscillating between those two activities. It's also possible to layer more detail into the visualizations. We can create maps that break out different types of communication among team members to discover, for example, if teams are falling into counterproductive patterns, such as shooting off an email when they need more face time. Step 2, training. And I'll share a few more of these just on camera real quick. What they're showing is email communication down here and talking to one another, face-to-face meetings, etc. up here. Step 2, training. With maps of the data in hand, we can help teams improve performance through iterative visual feedback. Work we did with a multicultural design team composed of both Japanese and American members offers a good example. Visual data are especially effective at helping far-flung and multilingual teams which face special communication challenges. The team's maps showed that its communication was far too uneven. They highlighted that the Japanese members were initially reluctant to speak up, leaving the team both low energy and unengaged. Every day, for a week, we provided team members a visualization of that day's work, with some light interpretation of what we saw. Keep in mind that we didn't know the substance of their work, just how they were interacting. We also told them that the ideal visualization would show members contributing equally and more overall contributions. By day 7, the maps showed the team's energy and engagement had improved vastly, especially for the 2 Japanese members, one of whom had become a driving force. The notion that visual feedback helps people improve quickly shouldn't be surprising to anyone that has ever had a golf swing analyzed on video or watched himself deliver a speech. Now we have the visual tools to likewise improve teamwork through objective analysis. Step 3, fine-tuning the performance. We have seen that by using visualizations as a training tool, teams can quickly improve their patterns of communication. But does that translate to improved performance? Yes. The third and final step in using the badge data is to map energy and engagement against performance metrics. In the case of the Japanese-American team, for example, we mapped the improved communication patterns against the team's self-reported daily productivity. The closer the patterns came to those of our high-performance ideal, the higher productivity rose. We have duplicated this result several times over, running similar feedback loops with teams aiming to be more creative and with executive teams looking for more cohesiveness. In every case, the self-reporting on effectiveness mapped to the improved patterns of communication. Through such maps, we often make important discoveries. One of the best examples comes from the bank's call center. For each team there, we mapped energy and engagement against average handling time, AHT, which we indicated with color. That map clearly showed that the most efficient work was done by high energy, high engagement teams. But surprisingly, it also showed that low energy, low engagement teams could outperform teams that were unbalanced, teams that had high energy and low engagement, or low energy and high engagement. The maps revealed that the manager needed to keep energy and engagement in balance as he or she worked to strengthen them. If a hard metric like AHT isn't available, we can map patterns against subjective measures. We've asked teams to rate their days on a scale of creativity or frustration, for example, and then seen which patterns are associated with highly creative or frustrating days. Teams often describe this feedback as a revelation. Successful tactics. The obvious question at this point is, once I recognize I need to improve energy and engagement, how do I go about doing it? What are the best techniques for moving these measurements? Simple approaches such as reorganizing office space and seating are effective. So is setting a personal example. When a manager himself actively encourages even participation and conducts more face-to-face communication, policy changes can improve teams too. Eschewing Robert's rules of order, for example, is a great way to promote change. In some cases, switching out team members and bringing in new blood may be the best way to improve the energy and engagement of the team, though we've found that this is often unnecessary. Most people, given feedback, can learn to interrupt less, say, or to face other people, or to listen more actively. Leaders should use the data to force change within their teams. The ideal team player. We can also measure individuals against an ideal. In both productivity-focused and creativity-focused teams, we have discovered the data signature of what we consider the best type of team member. Some might call these individuals natural leaders. We call them charismatic connectors. Badge data show that these people circulate actively, engaging people in short, high-energy conversations. They are democratic with their time, communicating with everyone equally and making sure all team members get a chance to contribute. They're not necessarily extroverts, although they feel comfortable approaching other people. They listen as much as, or more, than they talk, and are usually very engaged with whoever they're listening to. We call it energized but focused listening. The best team players also connect their teammates with one another and spread ideas around. And they are appropriately exploratory, seeking ideas from outside the group, but not at the expense of group engagement. In a study of executives attending an intensive one-week executive education class at MIT, we found that the more of these charismatic connectors a team had, the more successful it was. Team building is indeed a science, but it's young and evolving. Now that we've established patterns of communication as the single most important thing to measure when gauging the effectiveness of a group, we can begin to refine the data and processes to create more sophisticated measurements. Dig deeper into the analysis and develop new tools that sharpen our view of team member types and team types. The sensors that enable this science are evolving as well. As they enter their 7th generation, they are becoming as small and unobtrusive as traditional ID badges. While the amount and types of data they can collect are increasing, we've begun to experiment with apps that present teams and their leaders with real-time feedback on group communications. And the applications for the sensors are expanding beyond the team to include an ever broader set of situations. We imagine a company's entire staff wearing badges over an extended period of time, creating big data, in which we'd find the patterns for everything from team building to leadership to negotiation to performance reviews. We imagine changing the nature of the space we work in, and maybe even the tools we use to communicate on the basis of this data. We believe we can vastly improve long-distance work and cross-cultural teams, which are so crucial in a global economy. By learning their patterns and adjusting them, we are beginning to create what I call the God's eye view of the organization. But spiritual as that may sound, this view is rooted in evidence and data. It is an amazing view, and it will change how organizations work. This article was originally published in April 2012. Once again, it is entitled The New Science of Building Great Teams by Alex Sandy Pentland. Thank you.